Well, hello everyone, welcome. It's Mark Anderson here with my co-founder for Learn Live UAE, Mr. Olly Lewis. Hi Olly, how are you?
Good evening, Mark. I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really good. I'm really pumped for season 2 of Learn Live UAE. I can't believe we've gone through a whole season. I can't believe we've had the summer. You're actually back at school, aren't you? You're in school today, right?
Yeah, well, I've been back for about a week with members of SLT and PLT, but yeah, we managed to get everybody in today into the building, and I cannot explain, I can't find the words at just how amazing it has been to see all of my colleagues today across the whole school and just have those, the things that we've really missed, the corridor conversations, dropping in and just saying hello to everybody. Obviously, we've been socially distant while we've been doing that, but to just have the capacity to do that again, because that's bread and butter of schools, isn't it? It's those relationships that you have with your colleagues and being able to just be around each other and share in the joy of our profession. So it's been amazing to have that today.
Yeah, absolutely. Culture, relationships, all those things. They don't happen in meetings, do they? They happen in the corridor conversations. They happen while you're on bus duty or while you're doing a bit of lunch duty together outside or undercover. It needs to be undercover where you are. Probably with a hat on for you as well, Olly, to be fair. But yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? But how lovely. And for two people who are so passionate about technology, it goes back to that idea around purposeful use of technology and using it for the right reasons. We couldn't have survived this far in education without technology use these past 6, 7, 8 months, this calendar year. But it's about using it at the right times, and just whilst it's great to be using it at certain times, it's about making sure you have it as a balancing act with all those different things going on. And so it's lovely to hear that you've had such a fantastic experience today, being back in school with all of your colleagues. Welcome to all of our viewers tonight. Olly and I are going to be in our first episode of Learn Live UAE of this academic year. We're going to be thinking about those new to teaching in the region. Not necessarily new to teaching, but new to teaching in the region. And Olly, as somebody who is just starting his 3rd year working in the United Arab Emirates, he's going to be sharing some of his experiences. I've got some experience as well. My former partner sort of still teaches in the region, and I went through the process with her when she first moved to the region as well. So I've got some experience of that myself, albeit secondhand as part of that. So I've got a fair idea. And lots of friends and colleagues in the region as well. It's been lovely, for example, seeing the tradition that we've seen over the last few years from King's Ar Barsha, Russell Smart and the team, Olly, going and meeting their colleagues at the airport. It's a real hallmark of how schools really work really closely and well with their teams in the region. So it's been lovely to see all those things. And congratulations also to Russell Smart. He was very proud to share that he's still fitted in the same shirt and suit for his school. After all this time in lockdown, I'm not so certain I could say the same thing myself. But congratulations to him and all the team, and congratulations to all of the schools in the region as well. Because actually, whilst we may have seen a lot of the sort of first experiences of working under lockdown and advice and things coming out of China and Hong Kong, and a shout out to Mark Steed, former JES director, who's now head at Kellett School, sharing so much and helping so many schools with their first approaches. But as someone sort of from the outside looking in, it's been really great seeing how the schools in the UAE have responded to lockdown and teaching and their approaches, and being so open about sharing those things on social media. And I think the distance learning evaluations, Olly, have been a really positive process. And I know you're hoping to share a little bit about that during the session today as well. We're both really excited to be embarking on season 2. Say if you do want to talk to us during the session tonight, please do use the chat feature, whether you're watching on YouTube or Periscope. You can send messages through in the chat, and you can ask questions if you have any questions live in the chat. If you're watching this on the playback, then please do drop Olly and or I a line. And we're very happy to take the conversations beyond the episodes. But we're excited to be sharing a few things with you this evening, not just what we're going to be covering in our up and coming episodes. For example, next week we've got a conversation with an author about their book, and we'll be sharing more about that through our social media over the course of the next week. After that, we've got other episodes planned with the UAE Research Network. We've got book review sessions lined up. We've got guests from all across the region lined up to come and join us. And we're really excited to announce that we're going to be holding a large teaching and learning conference on the 16th of October as well. So please make a note in your diaries for that. 16th of October. And if you are interested in presenting at our Teaching, Learning and Leadership Conference on the 16th of October, please do again get in touch. And we'll be sharing via our social media a form where you can sign up to propose a session to speak at the event. And we're currently getting a few people lined up to speak at that event as well. Obviously, Ollie and I are very happy to be sharing at that event too. But really, really excited about that. Did you want to share anything about your sort of hopes and thoughts and dreams, perhaps, Ollie, for our season 2?
I'm just really excited that we're mixing it up a little bit. We've listened to advice from some of our listeners. We're changing the format slightly. We're not just going to have guests come on and present. We're also going to have interviews with authors, like Mark alluded to, as well as start to delve a little bit deeper into probably slightly different tangents of evidence-informed practice, and hear from educators across the region about the impact that certain practices in their schools have had. And then culminating in all of that with our Teaching, Learning and Leadership Conference, which falls at the start of half term out here in the Middle East. So everyone will be ready and available and hopefully able to attend the conference. But also, much as our mission was for this series, Mark, and that's to actually find other voices out in the education space within the region and hear from them. It's really easy to always go to somebody that's, let's say, has a huge Twitter following, but whilst we want guests like that, we also want the people that aren't necessarily on social media to hear from them, because much is our philosophy, and something that you've always shared quite openly is, every day is a learning day. And I firmly believe that everybody within education can learn from everybody else. And that's the rationale behind this show. So really keen to find some more voices in the region that we've not heard from, and hear them sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. And as per that initiative from Toria Bono, who started the Tiny Voice Tuesday thing as well, I meet teachers all the time, and particularly with my work in school. And this is true of schools that I've visited and worked with in the UAE and beyond. But every classroom I ever enter, and you'll know this, Ollie, from working in schools for as long as you have as well, every teacher has something to share. While they may think they haven't, they actually have. And I always learn something when I walk into a classroom, whether I'm in there 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I'll always pick up one little hint or tip. It may be something I've seen before, but no two lessons are ever the same, and no two teachers are ever the same. And so, and we're really keen to hear about what's going on in your school, from you, from all of your learners. So please, please, please do get in touch, because we're so keen to hear from as many educators as we can, because and something else that I always share, education really is a force for good, and we are definitely stronger together. And that's been a real hallmark of the pandemic, which has obviously been an exceedingly horrible thing for the whole world to sort of work through. But we've seen educators come together like never before, in sharing in ways that have been so powerful and impactful. I mentioned some names there, like Mark, Steve, for example, sharing work at Kellett, and welcome to Linda, who's sharing as well. I think it's going to be Linda Parsons. Sounds like some great ideas for this year. Lovely to hear that you're bringing people together, Ollie. I think that must be Linda. So thank you, Linda, from Dare International School, for joining us and sharing that with us too. Moving on to the focus for tonight's show, Ollie, you moved to the UAE just over 2 years ago now. Before you start sharing your presentation, I've got a few sort of like intro questions, and viewers, just so you know, this isn't rehearsed or scheduled. Ollie, before the show and yesterday and the day before, was like, Mark, what are you going to ask me? I'm not telling you, mate. I'm not going to tell you, because it's really important, I think, for things authentic and not rehearsed, and all those different things. So what brought you to look to move from your school near Reading that you were in before, where you had a variety of roles there? What brought you to want to move 6,000 miles to the Middle East? What brought you to thinking about wanting to do that?
We wanted a change of pace of life, really, and I'd always had my heart set on teaching internationally at some point in my career. When I was a little bit younger, I had sort of dreams of going and teaching in Spain, but I quite quickly realised that my Spanish wasn't actually good enough to go and live in a region of Spain that I wanted to live in. And then I kind of forgot about moving internationally. And then, as with sort of professional learning networks, you see and you hear things from people, and we all know the best kind of bit of advice you can get is from somebody else that's living it and doing it. And I ended up speaking to a few different educators that were out in the region, and they had nothing but great things to say. I had sort of some preconceptions at the start. Well, it's really hot all of the time. I'd heard that schools get inspected every year by KHDA, and I thought, well, that's quite heavy going for teachers. But ultimately, you've got to experience things for yourself, I think. And we were really keen to come and experience it. And I think that the autonomy that you can be given in the right school in the Middle East to develop your craft as a professional, I think is a fantastic opportunity. I think the opportunities that schools give you in terms of professional development in the Middle East are second to none. I think, certainly in the time that I've been here, which is quite short compared to a lot of other teachers, the fact that people come and they stay, a lot of people kind of come out here with the preconceived idea that I'll just do 2 years, I'll save myself a bit of money, and then I'll go home again. But the amount of people that come here with that mindset and stay and have been here 8, 10, 12, 15 years, I think speaks volumes for the place. And it's just a really, really nice place to be. You can have such a good quality of life here, and it's summer all year round, and you get used to the sort of range of temperatures, and it's lovely to just be able to do your normal working week, and then on a Thursday evening go to the beach or go to the pool with your family, and then on a Friday or Saturday, which is the weekend out here, you can still have a social life, or you can afford to actually do some things that you might not be able to afford to do back home in the UK. So I think the just sheer wealth of opportunity that you have out here as an educator to learn, grow, connect, and then have that really, really nice lifestyle outside of school, I think is such a big draw to the region that it's something that you've got to experience for yourself.
That's been my experience with people I've spoken with as well, Ollie. And what's great about the region as well is you've got so many great other little places which are really on your doorstep. I've been working in the UAE before, and then had some follow-up work in Qatar. I've been over to Oman. Oman actually isn't that long of a drive from where you are in Abu Dhabi. If you live in Al Ain, for example, it's even closer. And so you've got these amazing opportunities to visit some really fantastic places at the fraction of the cost that you might otherwise have had to have paid out for if you were sort of UK based, let's say, or American based. Yeah. Big shout out to Mark Ryan joining us as well. Thanks for joining us, Mark. UAE, home of the Rockstar Teachers, of which you are absolutely one, sir. So welcome, and thank you for joining us again on the show. So, Ollie, you've been there 2 years now then. You're starting your third year at the British International School of Abu Dhabi. You haven't left. So you haven't done your 2 years and then left. So do you have any regrets about moving where you are? It doesn't sound like it to me.
No, not at all. Not at all. I wish I did it earlier. Is actually my honest answer to that question. I wish that I'd been brave enough to move internationally and move out to the Middle East before 2 years ago. Really, I think it's such pressing buttons there. I think it's such an amazing place to live, and as you said, it's a hub for travel, not only within the Middle East and to other areas, but also if you wish to travel further east. No, not a single regret, really. I think my only regret, if you want to call it a regret, is the fact that and this is probably similar for a lot of teachers, that your family is a flight away. But ultimately, with modern technology the way it is, we can do this, or I can video call my friends and family back in the UK. So, as long as you're consistent with approaching that and maintaining communication, then not a problem at all. So no real regrets, actually.
That's really lovely to hear, Ollie. I know you've got some slides ready and things to sort of talk and share about. When you first moved into the region, what were the sort of things that sort of were starting to give you, or did give you, a little bit of what were you worried about? I mean, obviously, and I know this as your friend, but viewers might not know this. But you moved out here when Emmy was super young. She's a bit young now, but viewers, how old was your daughter when you moved to Abu Dhabi, Ollie? How old was she?
When we got on the aeroplane, she was 4 months old. So yeah,
so
she was.
If anyone can do it, viewers, then whether you're single, whether you're a married couple, it definitely can be done. And fair play to you, Ollie, for taking that big leap of faith. And I'm so pleased for you and your family. For how brilliantly it's worked out for you. But when you moved over, what were the sort of things that were worrying you about getting set up? Because logistically, it's quite a big deal, isn't it? So lots of new to the region. How we've called the episode something like "How to Survive Your First Year in the UAE as a Teacher." Mark says, that big risks and big rewards. Absolutely, Mark, absolutely. But the risk has definitely sort of been worth it, as you've alluded to. But what were the things you were worried about when you sort of first moved over, Ollie?
Obviously, moving with a 4-month-old, some people might think you're slightly crazy, but I think it was really simple things, but just that come to you quite quickly. So not knowing the local area, where's the hospital? Who do I go to if I have a problem? Where's my nearest pharmacy in case I need to go and get some Calpol or something like that? The other sort of flip side to that was sort of taking the family out is how is my family going to integrate? How are they going to find friends? And how will I get on? Because you move out here and you don't really know anybody. You might know someone through, say, Twitter, and they say, yeah, come for a coffee, let's catch up, and you meet in person. But I think those were kind of the 2-3 biggest sort of themes that I was hesitant about. But like Mark said, big risk, big reward. I think you just do it. There are so many people in the same boat as you. We take the UAE, and the population's about 10 million people across all of the Emirates. 88% of them are expats, and it's from all corners of the earth. And people are so friendly here. It's utterly amazing that they're kind of, having been in that situation before, I think people can sympathise with you, and they're empathetic, and they're really keen to just help, and assist you however they can, which is such an amazing thing to see in your fellow man or woman. Cool.
Well, look, you've got some things you want to sort of talk about and share around. Do you want to bring those slides as we've got some reference points to sort of call upon in our conversation?
Sure. Just let me stop sharing for a sec. So slide deck should be coming up now. Thank you.
There we go. Happy days.
So let's go. First thing to really sort of think about is banking and your finances. Having not really ever considered that for years, it's just one of those things that you do in the UK. I was really lucky when I moved out here because my school put on a event where 3 or 4 different banks came to us at the school, and we could go around and speak to them and find out, what their sort of procedures were. And then if you took certain cards with those banks, how many air miles you might accrue, or if you wanted to get cash back on any purchases that you had. So I think that was a really valuable experience. And what I would probably suggest now that that's not necessarily an option for outside providers to come into schools is that you ask the teachers in the school that you're in or considering moving to what banks they're with and why, to figure out the best deals that are out there for you, and what's going to work for you in your context. So it might be that we knew we weren't going to travel home loads in the first 2 years. We were just going to travel locally. We've done road trips to all the different Emirates. We've done a road trip, you mentioned earlier, to Oman. So we decided to opt for cashback on all of our purchases. And it's quite amazing the rates that you get, actually. When you think about the cashback you earn back in the UK, you get next to nothing back. But out here, they're quite generous with your spending. Something else that you see people fall into the trap of is they always equate the value of whatever it is they're going to buy, even if it's just milk from the shop or a bigger item like a nice microphone or a laptop. And they always translate it back into the money that they're familiar with, back into the currency of the country they've come from. But actually, I think it's important to get out of the mindset of that and just immerse yourself in the local currency or culture, so that you're not always relating your current experience back to the your previous setting and situation. So I think it's important to just get into the mindset of, well, I get paid in dirhams, so actually I'm not always going to convert it to pounds. I'm just going to accept that this item is this much money in the local currency, because you have to, consider certain things out here need to be imported, certain things can be grown locally. So what you might assume is more expensive out here than at home isn't necessarily always the case. Quite often that conversation can be flipped amongst yourself. Another one which is important to consider is your mobile phone. Mobiles can be quite expensive out here, like anywhere in the world, really, if you opt for a massive data plan or international minutes. But actually, you don't necessarily have to do that. I'm always somewhere where there's free Wi-Fi. So I didn't see the point in opting for a mobile plan where there's 10, 20, 30 gigs of data a month, because wherever you go, the Wi-Fi is free. You'll have Wi-Fi at home, you've got Wi-Fi at school. So why spend all that extra money when you don't necessarily need to? And another thing that we've done is we signed up through Etisalat to just something called Bottom, which just means I can video chat anybody at home or across the world that's got the app on their phone. And it's relatively inexpensive. It's 100 dirhams a month, which I personally think is a small price to pay for being able to maintain those lines of video communication with, friends and family. So something to think about. It's not for everyone. Other people might think, well, I would rather spend that 100 dirhams on a data plan so that I can, tweet or TikTok from wherever I am. But, that's entirely up to your own decision. My school got this one really right. When we first moved out, we got off the plane and they took us straight away in the airport to the stand and just got us a free SIM card straight from Etisalat. But I heard stories of some other schools where teachers have moved out here. They're still in quarantine now and they still haven't got a local SIM card. And it's a really easy thing to do for schools to get right really quickly. So, if you're picking someone up, new staff from the airport, just grab them a SIM card whilst you're there, rather than make them wait, that time period. Cool. Something else to sort of ponder on is cultural sensitivity.
Absolutely.
It's great to see Kings Al Barsha taking their staff somewhere to learn from the locals. I think some of the best lessons that and learning you'll get is by going straight to places like that and visiting local places of interest. I've made it a real focus for myself to just try and learn a few key words from our Arabic department, so that I can actually say the pleasantries with other Arabic people when I meet them, because I think that's really important. Schools will generally put on some sort of cultural sensitivity session once you first move to the Emirate, or any of the Emirates. But I think a point to sort of note here is don't necessarily believe everything you read online, because that could be something that throws people a little bit. And actually, not everything that you read online is true. This is a fantastic place to live, and my experience of Emirati people has been amazing. They're such nice, warm-hearted people. So, get to know them and really immerse yourself in their culture, and go and see the top 10 sites in Abu Dhabi or Dubai or Al Ain, to learn more about the local customs and culture. Because I think it would be a real shame if you moved somewhere and you never did any of that.
Yeah,
you want to look back whenever it is you decide to either move on or leave, and say, well, I've done all of these amazing things. I've learned so much about this particular country, that you've had a really rich, rewarding experience. Something else? Go on then. You're going to ask me a question.
Yeah, just linking into cultural sensitivity, although it's a tenuous link, but I want to ask you what your thoughts and experiences were around both driving in the region and how you approach actually getting a vehicle. Now, I know that you bought a vehicle, and I know that lots of other people will rent a vehicle, and obviously that will depend upon your own personal circumstances and the finances available and all the rest of it. So first question really is, have you got some advice around those two things there? And then any other advice, having been to the region probably 25 times in the last sort of 5 years, and having driven around a fair amount as well. So I don't want to. I wouldn't say that I'm an expert by any stretch. I'm probably more experienced than most people who don't live in the region, but you live in the region. So, do you have any advice to people who are new to the region about driving, particularly if they're looking to, let's say they're in Dubai and they fancy a jolly over to Abu Dhabi one weekend, and they've been invited to a Friday brunch or something like that. I know. Teachers, lots of teachers, particularly those who might be single as well, trying to navigate their way around can be a really sort of anxiety-ridden experience. Have you got any advice for people around, firstly, about how to go about sorting out a car and what to do around that sort of stuff, and then around sort of driving and navigating around? Because again, Google Maps sometimes can't even keep up with the amount of development and roads being built, particularly around Dubai. So, yeah, have you got any sort of thoughts around that, Ollie?
Yeah, I know loads of people that use Waze, but I'm a big fan of Google Maps, and you do find yourself sometimes in a position where you're like, hang on a minute, this road shouldn't exist, but you're driving on it. Generally speaking, the signage out here is actually really good. However, because it's the roads are so large, the country's actually quite massive. Infrastructure-wise, it's brilliant, but it can mean that if you miss your turning, you might have a sort of 10-15 minute detour on your hands. Whereas back in the UK, at the next junction, which is typically not very far away, you can just spin your car around. On the whole, though, actually, I think it's really easy to get from place to place in the Middle East, certainly driving speaking. We're familiar with back in the UK, like a 3-lane motorway, whereas out here it's pretty commonplace to have a 4 or even a 5-lane motorway, which just makes transitioning between places really, really easy. By and large, between here and that's the doorbell. Between here and so I'm in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. It's a 50-minute car journey from city to city. So it's really easy to move between the two cities. I think in terms of purchasing a car, though, because you get this kind of natural influx and outflux of not necessarily teachers, but people in general, you can pick up fairly decent secondhand deals on cars. There's places in Abu Dhabi like Motor World, or Dubizzle is another great site for finding secondhand cars. I do think it's always worth calling a dealership and checking, pre-price of cars, and establishing the condition. People here are really accommodating. I have a friend, Mikkel, that's just bought a second-hand car for going off into the desert, and The owner was like, yeah, let's go to the dealership, because they won't tell you the full service history unless the owner of the current vehicle is there with you. But they're more than happy to come with you to the dealership whilst a mechanic has a look at the car. So I think it's simple things like that. People are really accommodating, and B, shop around a little bit. There are so many cars out there that quite often people, once the car kind of hits 100,000 kilometers, they'll look to swap their car. But if the car's been serviced really well, it will still keep going for some time. It's also worth trying to look up, once you get there, the sort of any accident history that there has been on the car, and make sure that the VIN number of the car matches with what the seller is trying to actually sell you. And there are sites out here that you can find that out. If you go evg.ae, traffic accidents, I think it is, if I remember from a conversation with Mikkel last week, we went into the desert. It's something along those lines. So I would say that, make sure you go for a test drive, and just simple things like that. And ask around, ask people's prior experience. And if, say you're local to Sharjah, for example, ask your colleagues, right, which dealerships have you bought cars from, and how did that work out for you? And ask someone that's been in the region for a little bit of time to come along with you. People are more than happy to help out here. People give of their time so freely to help you out. It's such a nice thing to see.
Yeah, this is something I've seen plenty of. There is very much, and even though the expats aren't in the minority, there is a sort of in it together sort of spirit that you see with people helping each other out with different things, and people are so keen and eager and supportive. I think it's in the many schools that I've worked in, wherever I've gone, I've seen, and teachers are in the business of helping people anyway, generally speaking. So I think it's just a recognition of being in it together, like I say. What about the driving stuff? I mean, obviously, I mentioned you've mentioned it's easy to get around and things, but I've certainly had a number of Nissan Patrols going quite quickly, quite fast up behind me, as I'm sure you've had yourself as well, Ollie. What people are quite nervous drivers. I'm not really a nervous driver myself, but some people are quite nervous drivers. If you're a nervous driver, you've got any advice about how to experience that and things about speeding? Because I don't think I'm being rude when I say this, and I'm trying to maintain the whole idea of cultural sensitivity. But there are some people who don't really pay that much attention to the speed limits, shall we say?
Yeah. One of the best bits of advice I was ever given was just stay in the middle lane. Stay in the middle lane and let everything happen around you. I mean, I don't want to paint the picture that it's like a destruction derby, because it's really not. But because you've got such a mix of people, you've got quite a mix of different driving styles. So I think it's just maintaining your awareness of what is going on around you at all times. But you soon get into the mix of it, and you just see it as normal. There you go. There's someone outside tooting their horn.
We didn't plan that, viewers. We didn't plan that.
But times.
Oh dear! Right, well, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for that. That's really sage advice, Ollie. What were you going to cover next?
I was just going to sort of talk about your visa and residency.
Right.
This really is typically this is something that schools will arrange for you these days, and their lines of communication. It's really, really important that obviously you adhere to what your school is telling you. But I think we live these days in such an age where you expect that kind of instant response. So I think it's important to be mindful and patient with this, because while you might come from a country where it takes a week, it can take anything up to kind of 5 or 6 weeks before things are sorted. If you come out here with a family, you yourself, the teacher, will be a sponsor to the rest of your family. And funnily enough, tomorrow morning I have to go for my visa renewal, medical. And then once mine's all gone through, my family will have to go through. But I think just being patient, just accepting that sometimes something can take a little bit of time, and it's nothing to worry about. It'll get sorted. Just enjoy being in the country, working with your colleagues, and once it's done, it's done. Not stressing yourself that, it hasn't happened yet and it's been 3 weeks. Well, everyone's in the same boat. If you've got into the country and the school's employed you, you've done everything that you could possibly do. So just enjoy being here and be as patient as possible, and it will all work itself out. One of the final things I wanted to talk about was this idea of, it's not even an idea, it's a reality, a professional learning network. Teachers out here so eager to connect, to share with one another. You don't have to look very far on Twitter, say, for example, to find little examples of something like this, which shout out to Andy Price. He's done a couple of these now. So this is likely inspired by yourself, Mark, a periodic table of educators in the UAE. If you search at Mr. Andy Price on Twitter, you'll find a recent link to this, which you can find on his blog. And it's just loads of teachers in the region that are up for connecting, collaborating, sharing. We've obviously established this show, which is another example of those opportunities within the region. There's Teach UAE chat as well. So there's loads. There's the original tweet. Yes,
the tweet just there from Andy. In fact, he did tag me in it actually, which I think he put out just was it today or yesterday? Very recently. Yesterday he tweeted out. So loads of great people to follow there. Right across the board, different subjects, leadership. You've got all sorts of stuff, and great recommendations in there to have a little look at. So please do have a look at that. And again, developing that professional learning network, like Ollie said, there is super powerful and helpful. Sorry, Ollie, I removed your presentation. I'll bring myself right back out again. There we go. I'm out again.
It's okay. And an example of the power of something like this is seen all the time. There was a teacher. I'm just going to share my screen again. Here's a fantastic example of the learning networks out here. Gemma's an early years teacher. At the last minute, she her job was taken away from her, and loads of us rallied round, shared with schools, and look at this. What a great thing to happen, through professional learning networks. She found another job and could move back out here. And, the power of Twitter or a learning network truly is incredible. So it's things like that where people just come together naturally are so amazing to see out here in the region. And it's great to be a part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's been great as well is thinking about how all these things sort of come together, and teachers then sort of support each other as well, which is kind of what we're trying to achieve with our teaching, learning and leadership conference taking place on October the 16th. Another example of that, if the site comes up, I'll sort of ad lib for a moment because the site is actually quite slow, but a great account to follow on social media in the region, as well as Teach Middle East, which is the Twitter account for the Teach Middle East magazine, which has articles from educators right across the region. And they're holding their own teaching and learning conference this week. Please do search for the hashtag METLC. I used to sort of get it wrong. I was like, is it MELTC or METLC? And I just kept thinking of tender love and care. And if I remember that, then it's all good. And actually, it starts tomorrow through until the 27th. If you want to find out more about that, I'm just going to bring the home screen for the event up onto the screen right now. And if I can do that, here we go. And you should be able to see that now, Ollie. So here's the Middle East Teaching and Learning Conference online. Starts in 14 hours, 19 minutes and 30 seconds. And if you go to the speakers section, the site is quite slow, so I'm not going to start clicking through because we'll end up having to wait for the pages to load up and things. But there are fantastic speakers, some of which have actually been on the show last season. So Alan D. Williamson, for example, is presenting there. Ollie, you're presenting as well. What's your session on, Ollie?
My session is it's a little bit about sort of rethinking your time when you meet either as departments or teams, and having a greater focus on professional development. And that's what my session is on. How about yours, Mark? What's your session on?
Thanks, Ollie. My session is exploring hybrid teaching and learning and digital strategy, basically. I've given it a funky title like, supercharge your hybrid learning strategy or something like that. But essentially, it's looking at, the hard yards, the thinking behind, the evidence behind great teaching and learning using technology, and how you can then apply that in a strategic way, so that if you are having to do a hybrid approach with a bit of synchronous, asynchronous, face-to-face, remote, and all those sort of things, the approaches and tools that will work, and some guidance on how you can do all of that sort of stuff. Links to all the work that I normally do with schools anyway. So it's a sort of a taster session to get people thinking about those things, and some takeaways around all of that. So I think that's about. We've got most things sort of good for this episode, Ollie, don't you think?
Sorry, say that again. I lost you there for a sec.
That's all right. And so I think we've covered everything we want to cover for this episode this week, don't you?
We have, yeah. We've only got one thing to announce.
What's that?
And that was that we're obviously going to hold an online session, 16th of October, but we were going to announce a speaker a week within each show.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Thank you very much for reminding me. So I'm pretty confident you've got a lovely, well-designed slide with somebody's picture on it, somebody who's agreed to speak at our Teaching, Learning and Leadership Conference on the 16th of October. Please don't book yourself for a brunch on that Friday, please. Put a little note in your diary, calendar entry, that you'll be joining Ollie and myself, and, drum roll please, I don't know how long I can keep it up for, Ollie. Loading, no lag.
There we go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really excited to hear from Ben. He's somebody who, like me, loves using technology, but wants to do it in really informed ways, which can are linked to what works in education. So super excited to hear from Ben. Please do follow him on Twitter, VHPS_ASST head on Twitter. And again, this goes to one of the hallmarks of most educators that we see in professional learning networks, not just in the UAE, to be fair, Ollie, but around the world. But you got any questions? Ben, he'll be there. He'll reply in a positive way. He'll be supportive, all those sort of things. And really excited to invite Ben onto the show in a few weeks. We're doing a book review episode where educators such as Ben are coming on. They're talking about a book that they've read and the impact it's had on their teaching, learning, and or leadership within their schools. So really excited to have Ben not only as a guest in a few weeks, but also joining us at the Learn Live UAE Teaching, Learning, and Leadership Conference on the 16th of October. Remember, as we said at the beginning of the show, if you're interested in joining us, interested in presenting and sharing at that event, then please do get in touch. We're also seeking sponsorship to try and really elevate the support around the whole event and make it run as smoothly as possible. So if you're a local education-based company or an edtech company looking to provide support for our event, we'd love to hear from you. And there's a variety of ways in which you can involve yourself and engage yourself through that, be it through presenting on the day to supporting us with some of the technology we need to make the event really pop and sing over the course of the day. So really looking forward to hearing from Ben. And I say, if you're interested in getting involved, either presenting or in sponsoring the conference, then please do get in touch with either myself or Ollie. We'd love to hear from you. So, Ollie, until next week, I mean, but actually, to be fair, viewers, between now and next week, Ollie and I will probably have quite a few chats in getting ready for the show. But in terms of this episode, though, I think it's time for us to say thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to Mark, Run Educator, Linda Parsons, and the others who've joined us during the course of our live show tonight. Shout outs for Andy Price and Russell Smart and others as well. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next week, Monday, 8 p.m. GST, 5 p.m. BST. We'll see you then. Thank you so much.